Alright, so we have the full Famitsu interview with Junichi Masuda about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, brought to us by Nintendo Everything with the translation. So the start of the interview doesn't really have anything too crazy. You've already discussed this in a variety of places. Could you tell us about how you developed the concept of the two games? Pretty much success of Pokemon Go, integration, bringing your outside Pokemon adventure inside, more family oriented and stuff like that. But one thing that needs to be made clear is that this is a Pokemon game for everyone. The direction, the development, the main idea behind Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee is that this is everyone's Pokemon game, and just by looking at the games, you can see that this is a pure expression about the spirit of Pokemon. A lot of what is true to Pokemon is directly represented in this game in a way that is good for everyone, that we're going back to Kanto, so that's for the older Pokemon players. Also, pretty much every mechanic and feature is still intact. It's only the removal of wild Pokemon battles that people are upset of, and even then, that doesn't make any sense, because Pokemon fans, they can never be satisfied. It's like, oh, we want this in a game, oh, we want that in a game, and then everyone just hates the new games anyways, so what's the point? That when we look at this, you know, people have been saying we need change in Pokemon games for a while. This is a change that isn't against the core of Pokemon, that doesn't do anything bad to Pokemon, it's just something different. But then people go, ew, it's different, and then they hate the games, even though this is still a Pokemon game for everyone. Looking at everything else about the games, our approach was best summarized by saying our goal was to make it. So this is their approach. This is their summary. This is what if they have one thing to say about the game, it's a Pokemon game for everyone. Being strongly against that, disrespecting the developers, disrespecting the spirit of Pokemon, it makes it really hard for you to call yourself Pokemon. Like, how can you call yourself a Pokemon fan if you disrespect developers and you don't like Pokemon to that degree, and then you just needlessly hate the game over a single feature? It doesn't make sense. So that's kind of like what this part is, but then we get into the more interesting aspect of this interview, and this is mostly what this video is going to be about, just talking about the removal of wild Pokemon battles and their ideas and reasoning behind it. The rest of the interview just kind of has things we've already known about, or kind of like trying to promote other features like the integration, talking about the voice actor for Eevee. So there's still a little bit of extra information, but this is kind of the big stuff that hasn't really been talked about as much. Challenging the fixed concept of Pokemon, the wide-scale reform of the Pokemon series, has Masuda made it possible. Beginning with the actual capture mechanics, you seem to be utilizing many of Pokemon Go's mechanics in a variety of places. What do you aim to accomplish through this? We're incorporating the best mechanics from both the core games and Pokemon Go, so that way both groups of players can enjoy a fresh experience. Keywords: fresh experience. Again, like, people are complaining, it's like, oh, Pokemon's just the same thing over and over again, and now we have a fresh experience, and then that's just a massive complaint. So, although it seems like the games are based around Pokemon Yellow version, there are elements of Pokemon Go as well. We tried to find a happy medium between the interesting features of both the games that ended up pursuing what you see now. So, another thing about Pokemon Go that people fail to acknowledge or realize is that Pokemon Go was made for Pokemon fans first. It was a core Pokemon game. That's really just Niantic that ruined it, and then a lot of other things went really wrong with it, and then the community kind of snowballed and became bad. But again, like, if there's like those toxic elements of Pokemon Go community, we already saw toxicity in the Pokemon community long before Pokemon Go even became a thing. So it's just kind of like, you know, core Pokemon mentality ruining the games and then people's perception of the games. But overall, Pokemon Go was made for Pokemon fans, so integrating a Pokemon fan game, or a game made for fans, with games for fans, how is that a bad thing? I still don't understand it. So incorporating elements for Go is quite groundbreaking. It must have taken a lot of courage to make that decision. It was a daunting task we took upon ourselves, for sure. There was considerable debate within the team concerning the absence of wild Pokemon battles. Up until this point, I'd been steadfast in defending the mechanic as series director. This time, though, I felt like we should try to change things up a bit. Personally, I've always felt that weakening capturing mechanic is a bit like fishing. There's people that aren't fans of that kind of strategy, though. To that end, as I mentioned before, I want to make these games more enjoyable for a wider audience of fans. As such, we simplify the mechanics. And I think that that's actually key right here. That not everyone is going to like this new capturing mechanic, but the thing is, there are people that enjoy wild Pokemon battles, or that have grown up and played wild Pokemon battles their entire life with Pokemon, that are okay with this feature, like me, like with the millions of other people that have already pre-ordered Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So I think that that's kind of like a really big point to note, that just because you're entitled and you need everything to be exactly your way and you can't handle any change in a new Pokemon game, well, yeah, then that means you're just turning this into hate, you're creating toxicity about it, and then you're disrespecting the developer's intention, spirit of Pokemon, like I've said. But at the same time, that doesn't automatically make this a bad decision. That doesn't automatically mean that this is ruining Pokemon or that's anything terrible, because it appeals to a wider audience. That this is going to be for Pokemon Go players, and even the people that consider themselves Pokemon fans inside of Pokemon Go, or people that have been brought in. So this is going to attract more people, while also keeping more core Pokemon fans still engaged. I don't care about the new feature, and I welcome it. I find it exciting to see what kind of new tech, what we can do to optimize Pokemon catching in this new system. That's exciting. That's exciting to see what is possible with something new inside Pokemon, instead of spamming repels because I never want to see a wild Pokemon battle during the story because it eats up time, using quick balls on the first turn anyways, so exactly like the Pokemon capture mechanics in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, or just grinding through tons and tons of Pokemon for EVs and then not really caring. False swipe, you know, it's like false swipe plus status and then you automatically catch the Pokemon. And if it takes 10 turns because it's just a low capture rate, that's more frustrating. So I like his fishing analogy. Even though I love fishing, guys. I turn fishing into a not boring sport because I'm pretty good at it. But, like, yeah, I think that this is it. You know, it's a bit like fishing. There are people who aren't fans of that kind of strategy, and it is a different kind of strategy. That you see people defending wild Pokemon battles, like, oh, but you need to do this, and I've loved every wild Pokemon battle. But at the same time, a lot of Pokemon fans... Dude, they're Mount Moon. That's kind of what turns people off the game. The Zubat memes. There's all kinds of memes of what's going on with Pokemon encounters, especially when you have just unavoidable walls and just massive patches of Pokemon that you're forced to encounter into. That's what I mean. Like, honestly, the second I can buy repels, I do so, because unless I'm specifically looking to expand my team, I don't care about any wild Pokemon battles, because I'm going to battle trainers. And then that's where I'm going to get all my experience, and I'm still going to be strong enough to take on the gyms anyways. So I don't feel like anything is lost by not having battles, except for the introduction of a new mechanic, and also just being able to explore Pokemon in a more free kind of way. Wild Pokemon battles started feeling like a drag because just of the evolution of Pokemon. I don't think they added too much difficulty. They didn't really change things up too much because, okay, you're kind of stuck because there's a wall of wild Pokemon that make it hard for you to progress. You just eventually train on them, and then you one-shot them, and then now you're over-leveled. So I don't see any problem with the way that this mechanic is done. So yeah, I want to make these games more enjoyable for a wider audience of fans. Till now, it has been very reminiscent of fishing, whereas I've taken a new mechanic to catching bugs with a net. This is also something that is extremely core to Pokemon, and I noticed this immediately with the removal of wild Pokemon battles. I was like, well, guys, remember how Satoshi Tajiri, how Pokemon was developed? It was actually inspired by going out in the wild and catching bugs. Bugs don't put up a fight. You don't need to take a bug, slap it on a tree with another bug, and then have them duke it out until that other bug is weak enough for you to net. You just throw the net at it. You just throw the Pokeball at it. So, I mean, that is still kind of the original, idea of Pokemon still being represented. And then Pokemon battling isn't removed because you still have trainer battles, looks like legendary Pokemon battles. So everything else core is still in the game, and this is still very respectful to Pokemon. People are like, oh, but wild Pokemon battles are core to Pokemon. Removing it kills the game or kills the spirit of Pokemon, you hypocrite. Not really when we go back. If you want to go into the deepest lore, not really. So I have to wonder if people will enjoy that straightforward mechanic more than the previous mechanic. I feel like I might at this point. Like, it's cool in the beginning, when it's like, you know, back in the earlier days when there weren't guides, when there wasn't really too much known about Pokemon. But after a while, like, even people coming into the games new, it's not going to be like this crazy new experience that wild Pokemon battles are in the game. So I think that this is something that's going to be new for everyone, because, like, it's going to be Nintendo Switch, so using the Joy-Con to catch the Pokemon instead of just swiping your finger for Pokemon Go. And even then, the Pokemon Go mechanic hasn't been around for the decades that the other Pokemon catching mechanics have been in. So I think this is going to be cool. I can't wait to see how they change it for Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee as well, because it's going to get difficult. There's going to be, you know, optimization to it, and that's really awesome. Changing something so fundamental as the capture mechanic would be difficult for somebody who isn't you. So that is one thing about the interview, like Famitsu, there's a lot of praise, you know, can Masuda do it? Will he be successful? Someone that isn't you would have a hard time changing these mechanics. None of the younger staff could decide something so bold, I'd imagine. There are certainly plenty of other mechanics that'd be difficult to change, I guess. But if developers don't actually confront those kinds of challenges, this series gameplay would become fixed and stale, wouldn't it? I mean, yeah, it's like this change, if you just look at this change as a change, it's not a bad thing in any way. It's a new way of capturing Pokemon that isn't broken, that is a lot of balance about it, that seems fair and works for everyone. Huh. So to prevent that staleness, I'd like to keep promising new ways of playing without any reservations. Of course, there would be those that aren't satisfied with the changes, but even then, driving the idea behind these games is that they're for everybody to enjoy. Given that philosophy, I will do my best to make sure that future games reflect feedback we receive, both good and bad. So let's talk about the feedback that we covered in yesterday's video. But I mean, see, if he thinks everybody can enjoy this, that's why this is the most core thing about Pokemon. These games are for everyone to enjoy. Does this represent Pokemon? Yes, then we can make the change. And that's how you get away with it. And that's how it's just completely fine. Obviously, the gameplay is significantly new, but as a whole, can you tell us how the story has changed? In remaking a 20-year-old product, the hardware is completely different, graphics sound have evolved to a much different caliber. Story, however, really hasn't changed that much. Players will notice a few additional elements here and there. For example, I think back on Pokemon Yellow version, some instances where it might be difficult to figure out where to go next, or where the next objective is. In this game, by contrast, there's a few supplementary features that'll make the game a bit easier to play. Now I immediately see people just going, oh, easy mode, games for babies, not for real Pokemon fans. But you guys gotta admit that the first generation games were ridiculous. That it was mostly just wandering around for hours and hours and hours until you just kind of like entered the right building or talked to the right person that kind of made you understand what to do and where to go. And this is just the design that we've seen since Black and White version. The interviews that Junichi Masuda has had is like, hey, this is a different generation. The people that grew up in the 90s are much different from the 2000s and 2010s and stuff like that. Kids need easier games, and they're just, the culture is different behind it. It's more mobile phone driven culture. It's more impatient, entitled kind of culture with gameplay. So if they want people to enjoy this game, then that's going to be a way of doing it. Also, like for the older fans complaining, I think this is the best way of doing it. You do it in a remake. You do it in an enhanced version or something like that, because we've already played the games. Us being told, hey, this is where you go, doesn't really change anything because we already know where to go. So I think it's just going to be better for making people feel more comfortable inside the games, because like there were people that quit back in the day because they just couldn't stop it. I mean, I would actually have made a pretty bad story about my brother, but I think that'd be a little too BM. I've said it before, but I think I'll just leave it out now. It seems like it might be easier for even first-timers to progress through the game. How about battles and training Pokemon? Are they much different? When it comes to training Pokemon, you can still level up catching Pokemon through trainer battles. Additionally, you can send Pokemon to Professor to receive candies that directly enhance your Pokemon strength. I love that mechanic. People are like, oh, so now we're just going to fill up our boxes by mass catching Pokemon. That's still very Spirit of Pokemon. We send it to Professor Oak. That feels like everything that the anime is about. That feels like everything that Pokemon is about. They get used for research, and then we get rewarded in a very optimizable way. That's fun to me. Thought about implementing training variety of ways, but came down to it, Pokemon Go system seemed to be the simplest and most comprehensible. So again, taking Pokemon Go for Pokemon fans, integrating it in core series, boom. We have a good setup. We changed UI for the battles, but the logistics are largely the same. So there we go. Simplified certain areas of gameplay, make it seem like the game will be fun for all types of players. Was having wild Pokemon appear on the map itself also product higher level of user friendliness. Didn't really consider it at first, but the more I thought about catching Pokemon as catching bugs in a net. Decide to implement a system where you could decide to catch certain Pokemon after seeing it from a distance. Again, it is that's the Pokemon adventure. That what I love about Pokemon Let's Go is even the names. Like somehow people hate the names of the games when really the names are also incredibly core to the spirit of Pokemon. Let's go on an adventure. Have people have all the haters just grown up, hate their lives that they've kind of like just forced themselves into through their own ignorance, and they can't appreciate being a kid again? They can't appreciate anything fun in their life anymore? Because like that's how I feel about people that hate this game. That this is about the fun expression of Pokemon, being able to go out and have a true Pokemon adventure, and they hate it. That's just sad. And I think that's kind of it. So then it's just talking about, like, you know, the animations definitely strain the bond between you and your partners. This seems like the kind of game that could easily get lost in by just watching each Pokemon's behavior. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. We've also seen something like this before. I think it might have been an older interview where Junichi Masuda talked about, like, getting lost in the Pokemon's behavior. I think it might have been about Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokemon you can see in the field are incredibly lively, too. Just watching the Pokemon is great in and of itself. Nice to finally be able to see a Pokemon, think to yourself, I'm going to catch that, and just do it. There we go, guys. Boom. Then talk about like red and blue and then Go mechanics. Nowadays it seems like Pokemon people perceive Pokemon as more than just game characters, don't you think? In the past, I avoided putting clothing on, or putting things like clothing on Pikachu, mostly because people might have been confused as to what the clothes were its body, is it just a clothing? But Champ, by the way, isn't wearing pants. That's his body. These days, even if Pikachu is wearing clothes, people can still perfectly recognize that it's Pikachu, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think that it is, like, there's a lot more expressions of Pokemon than just seeing the sprite on screen, than just seeing the Pokemon in the game, to where you can actually take that freedom to represent the Pokemon differently, and that's because everyone understands Pokemon that well. So again, this isn't something like, oh, we value these new players as idiots that need a dumbed down game, therefore we can't afford to put clothing on Pikachu because it might confuse them. No, see, like, there's a lot of respect where it's like, hey, there is Pokemon here. There is established Pokemon that we get to work with, and they seem to understand what they can change and what needs to be simplified for this newer audience so we can sell more copies and then bring people into the next Pokemon game. So there we go, guys. That's kind of like the bulk of the big stuff to talk about in this interview. And I think it's some really awesome, stuff to talk about, and it does clarify it. Like, I still don't understand. The more I read things, the more I look at the game, the more I want it. It's not like one feature kills the entire thing for me, but yeah, I still don't understand where people find this justification and just the needless hate. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.